True cognitive clarity after 60 may depend less on complex supplements and more on regulating the simple sugars consumed daily. Many health-conscious individuals embrace all fruits as universally healthy, overlooking the profound metabolic impact high-sugar varieties can have on an aging brain. Dyer often emphasized the power of intention and the mind-body connection in shaping physical reality. This perspective suggests that how and why a person eats is as crucial as what they eat. Understanding this link between specific natural sugars and mental fog provides a clear framework for enhancing neurological well-being, shifting from reaction to conscious intention. The glucose-clarity connection, the human brain, is a remarkably energy-intensive organ, demanding nearly 20% of the body's total energy budget despite accounting for only a fraction of its mass. This energy is primarily derived from glucose, a simple sugar that fuels the intricate dance of neurons. For the brain to function optimally, this fuel supply must be stable and consistent. When the delivery of glucose becomes erratic, characterized by sharp peaks and deep troughs, the immediate casualty is cognitive clarity. This phenomenon is particularly relevant for individuals over 60, as aging can naturally reduce metabolic flexibility, making the brain more vulnerable to these glycemic fluctuations. When an individual consumes a food high in simple sugars, that glucose is rapidly absorbed into the bloodstream. This event is known as a glucose spike. The body, sensing this sudden and potentially dangerous rise in blood sugar, initiates a powerful defensive response. The pancreas releases a surge of insulin, a hormone whose primary job is to unlock the body's cells, allowing them to absorb the excess glucose from the blood. While this is a necessary survival mechanism, it is far from metabolically benign. The sheer velocity of this hormonal shift pulls the body out of homeostasis and into a state of emergency management. The powerful surge of insulin often overcorrects the problem. It works so efficiently that it can drive blood glucose levels down too far, resulting in a state of reactive hypoglycemia, commonly known as a sugar crash. For the brain, this crash is a full-blown energy crisis. Deprived of its primary fuel source, the brain's higher-order functions begin to falter. This manifests as brain fog, characterized by difficulty concentrating, memory lapses, slowed thinking, and a feeling of mental fatigue. This state is often accompanied by irritability and a powerful, almost primal craving for more sugar, as the brain signals its desperate need for fuel, perpetuating the cycle. Dyer, in his explorations of the mind-body connection, often emphasized that our physical state is a direct reflection of our internal world, including our habits and intentions. He might posit that this biological roller coaster is not merely a mechanical failure, but a result of unconscious living. Engaging in habits that repeatedly spike and crash blood sugar, even if the source is natural fruit, demonstrates a disconnect from the body's intrinsic needs. Dyer's philosophy urges a shift from habitual, reactive eating to conscious, intentional fueling, where the choice is made not just for fleeting pleasure, but for sustained well-being and clarity. Consider an individual in their mid-60s committed to a healthy lifestyle. They begin their day with a large fruit smoothie, blending mango, banana, and pineapple with a base of orange juice. Intellectually, this meal aligns with their belief in eating natural. However, this beverage represents a massive, fiber-stripped bolus of fructose and glucose. Within 30 minutes, their blood sugar soars. By mid-morning, they're experiencing a profound mental slump, struggling to organize their thoughts or focus on a task. They might attribute this fatigue to poor sleep or simply getting older, failing to connect it to the well-intentioned breakfast that initiated the metabolic cascade. In contrast, imagine the same individual opted for a breakfast centered on protein, healthy fats, and high-fiber, low-glycemic carbohydrates. This meal would result in a slow, gentle rise in blood glucose, providing the brain with a steady, reliable stream of energy for hours. There would be no spike, no surge of insulin, and no subsequent crash. This metabolic stability forms the biological foundation for sustained concentration, emotional equanimity, and a mental sharpness that so many seek to preserve. The difference is not one of virtue, but of biochemical consequence. The damage from repeated glucose spikes extends far beyond temporary fog. Chronically high blood sugar levels promote systemic inflammation. Glucose is a sticky molecule, and when present in excess, it can randomly attach to proteins and fats in the body through a process called glycation. This process creates harmful compounds known as advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. These AGEs are stiff and dysfunctional, contributing to oxidative stress and damaging tissues. In the brain, AGEs can impair neuronal function and damage the delicate blood vessels of the blood-brain barrier, accelerating cognitive decline. Many people are searching for ways to maintain mental sharpness as they age. This pursuit is not about vanity. It is about preserving the ability to engage, learn, and connect with loved ones. Understanding that something as fundamental as blood sugar management can directly impact this goal is an empowering piece of knowledge. It shifts the focus from inevitable decline to actionable, personal agency. The desire for a clear and functional mind is a core human aspiration, worthy of careful attention and respect. Wayne Dyer's perspective would encourage this individual to move beyond the simplistic labels of healthy and unhealthy taught by external authorities. Instead, he would champion the practice of deep listening. The body communicates its state constantly. The brain fog, the energy slump, the cravings are not inconveniences but vital messages. Dyer's work suggests that true health arises when one aligns their actions with this internal feedback, honoring the body's signals for balance rather than overriding them with rigid, external rules or unexamined habits. Over months and years, the brain adapts to this volatile environment, but not in a positive way. Chronic exposure to high insulin levels can eventually lead to insulin resistance, a condition where the body's cells, including brain cells, become deaf to the hormone signals. This is a critical problem, as insulin plays a vital role in the brain beyond glucose transport, including supporting synaptic plasticity and memory formation. This link has become so strong that some researchers now refer to Alzheimer's disease as type 3 diabetes, highlighting the profound and destructive link between sugar dysregulation and neurodegeneration. The glucose roller coaster also directly interferes with the brain's delicate chemical balance. The production of key neurotransmitters, such as dopamine and serotonin, can be affected by the availability of their precursor nutrients, which in turn are impacted by insulin levels. Furthermore, the brain fog experienced during a sugar low is not just a lack of fuel. It can also be a disruption in acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter essential for learning and memory. The brain, in its energy-deprived state, simply cannot synthesize and deploy these chemical messengers effectively, leading to a global reduction in cognitive performance. This dynamic often plays out in social settings, creating a difficult choice. An individual might be at an afternoon gathering where sweet fruits, cakes, and juices are served. They may feel social pressure to indulge, or they may simply desire to participate. However, they know that consuming these items will likely lead to an evening of mental sluggishness and perhaps even disrupt their sleep. This creates a conflict between immediate social pleasure and the desire for long-term clarity. It is in this moment that the intentionality Wayne Dyer spoke of becomes most practical and most challenging, requiring a conscious choice aligned with one's deeper values. What subtle bodily signal have I been ignoring? High glycemic fruits and cognitive fog. Not all fruits are created equal in their metabolic impact. The food industry and diet culture have often painted fruit with a broad, uniformly positive brush. This simplification, however, masks a crucial distinction: the difference in glycemic load. Fruits that are particularly high in sugar and low in fiber can act biochemically much like processed candy in the bloodstream. For an individual over 60, whose insulin sensitivity may be waning, consuming these specific fruits can be a direct trigger for the brain fog and energy crashes discussed previously. The problem is not the fruit itself, but the concentration and type of sugar it delivers. A common cognitive trap is the belief that natural sugar is harmless sugar. The body, however, does not make this distinction in the same way the mind does. While whole fruits contain vitamins, minerals, and water, the brain's immediate response is dictated by the sugar load. Tropical fruits, such as mangoes, bananas, and pineapples, are particularly dense in sugar. Grapes and cherries are also high on the list. When consumed in large quantities, these natural foods can easily overwhelm the body's glucose management system, initiating the same spiking crash cycle as a sugary soda. A primary sugar in fruit is fructose. Fructose is metabolized differently than glucose. While glucose can be used by nearly every cell in the body, fructose is processed almost exclusively by the liver. When the liver encounters a large dose of fructose, such as from a large smoothie or a big bowl of grapes, it becomes overwhelmed. It cannot process all the fructose for energy at once. Instead, it begins converting the excess fructose into triglycerides, fats, and uric acid. This process contributes to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and can also increase inflammation, further impacting brain health. Wayne Dyer was a master at questioning deeply held, unexamined assumptions. He would likely find the concept of unlimited healthy fruit a prime example of such an assumption. His philosophy encourages a move beyond simplistic labels. He would prompt an individual to ask not, "Is this fruit healthy?" but rather, "Does consuming this fruit in this quantity at this time serve my intention for mental clarity?" This shifts the power back to the individual, demanding self-awareness over dogmatic adherence to a rule. The most potent example of this problem is fruit juice. An individual may squeeze 6 fresh oranges to make 1 glass of juice. They have now consumed the sugar of 6 whole fruits in a matter of minutes, but with 0 of the original fiber. The fiber in whole fruit is crucial. It acts as a physical barrier, slowing down the absorption of sugar into the bloodstream. By removing the fiber, juice becomes a high glycemic, mainline dose of fructose and glucose. This liquid sugar hits the liver and bloodstream with a force that the body is simply not designed to handle, guaranteeing a significant metabolic disruption. Contrast the glass of juice with the act of eating 1 whole orange. The process of peeling and eating the orange takes time. The fiber, the pulp and pith, creates bulk in the stomach, signaling satiety to the brain. The sugar is released slowly as the fiber is digested. The metabolic impact is minimal, a gentle wave rather than a tidal wave. The body can easily manage this small, slow dose of sugar. This illustrates that the form in which a fruit is consumed is just as important as the type of fruit. Dried fruits present another common trap. Raisins, dates, and dried apricots are often marketed as healthy snacks. However, the drying process removes all the water, concentrating the sugar into a dense, easy-to-overconsume form. A small handful of raisins contains the sugar of a large bunch of grapes. It is exceptionally easy to eat 5 or 6 dried figs, consuming the sugar equivalent of 5 or 6 fresh fruits in moments. This concentrated sugar hits the bloodstream with a potency similar to juice, triggering a strong insulin response and subsequent cognitive fog. This distinction highlights a core tenet of Wayne Dyer's philosophy, the power of mindfulness. Drinking juice or eating handfuls of dried fruit is often a mindless act, done quickly while distracted. Eating a whole, fresh fruit requires more presence. Dyer spoke extensively on the difference between the self and the ego. The ego-driven mind wants immediate gratification and follows simple rules. Fruit is good. The higher self, the conscious observer, engages with the act of eating deliberately, aware of the body's response and the long-term consequences of a choice. The chronic overconsumption of high glycemic fruits, especially in their juiced or dried forms, contributes directly to insulin resistance. When the liver is constantly busy turning fructose into fat and the pancreas is constantly releasing insulin, the body's cells begin to ignore the hormone signal. This resistance is devastating for the brain. Brain cells need insulin to pull in glucose. When the brain itself becomes insulin-resistant, its neurons begin to starve, even in the presence of abundant glucose in the blood. This starvation in the midst of plenty is a hallmark of age-related cognitive decline. This entire mechanism is amplified after the age of 60. As the body ages, processes naturally slow down. Insulin sensitivity tends to decrease, and the liver's capacity to manage large sugar loads may be reduced. A high-sugar fruit meal that a 20-year-old could handle with minimal disruption can be a major metabolic event for a 65-year-old. This is not a failure, but a biological reality that requires a shift in strategy. The need for conscious, intentional eating becomes more critical, not less, with age. An individual, having heard this information, might seek a safe list of fruits, such as berries, which are high in fiber and low in sugar. This is a positive step. However, even these low-glycemic fruits can become a vehicle for sugar delivery. A bowl of berries topped with honey or maple syrup, or served with sweetened yogurt, simply reintroduces the problem. The context of the entire meal matters. The goal is not to find a loophole, but to fundamentally understand and respect the principle of managing the total glycemic load. A potential pitfall of this knowledge is developing a phobia of all fruit. This is not the goal. Whole, fiber-rich, low-sugar fruits are valuable sources of phytonutrients and vitamins. The limitation of this sugary fruit warning is that it can be taken to an unhelpful extreme. The key is moderation, form, and pairing. Eating a small handful of berries with a source of protein and fat, like nuts or plain yogurt, will blunt any potential sugar spike, allowing the individual to gain the benefits without the cognitive cost. Which healthy habit might be holding me back? Mindful consumption versus habitual eating. The biochemical impact of high-sugar fruits is a critical piece of the cognitive clarity puzzle. However, biology is not the only force at play. The psychological framework through which an individual approaches food is equally, if not more, important. This is where the distinction between habitual, unconscious eating and mindful, intentional consumption becomes paramount. A person can eat the right foods in a state of distraction and stress, or the wrong foods with presence and awareness. Wayne Dyer's work provides a powerful lens for understanding this distinction, suggesting that the intention behind the action fundamentally alters the experience. For many people, eating is governed by habit, not conscious choice. These habits are deeply ingrained neurological pathways. An individual might eat a sweet fruit every morning simply because they have done so for 20 years. They might reach for grapes while watching television, not from hunger, but from automatic association. This is the mind on autopilot. In this state, the body's signals of satiety or distress, like incipient brain fog, are ignored, drowned out by the noise of the established routine. Habitual behaviors are governed by the basal ganglia and the default mode network of the brain. These systems are designed for efficiency. They allow a person to perform complex tasks, like driving or eating, without expending significant cognitive energy. However, this efficiency comes at the cost of awareness. When in this autopilot mode, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for impulse control, planning, and self-awareness, is effectively offline. The individual is not choosing to eat. They are reacting to a cue. Wayne Dyer built his philosophy on the concept of shifting from a life of reaction to a life of intention. He argued that individuals have the power to consciously create their reality, moment by moment. Applied to food, this means transforming eating from a mindless habit into a deliberate, intentional act. Before eating, the intentional individual pauses. They ask, what is my intention for this meal? Am I eating to fuel my body for clarity? Am I eating to soothe an emotion? Am I eating simply to taste? This pause breaks the chain of habit. This intentional pause is the practical solution. It bridges the gap between biological knowledge and real-world action. An individual might know that a large mango smoothie is metabolically disruptive, but the desire for it remains. The mindful, Dyer-inspired approach is not one of rigid deprivation. Instead, the individual might decide to have a few slices of mango, to eat them slowly and after a meal rich in protein and fat. This mindful compromise honors the desire while using biological knowledge. Protein and fat blunt the glucose spike to completely mitigate the negative cognitive effects. The mindfulness itself becomes the regulatory tool. Consider an individual over 60 facing a stressful afternoon. Perhaps they are managing finances or dealing with a family issue. The stress triggers a rise in cortisol, which in turn makes the brain crave a quick energy source, sugar. The habitual response is to grab a banana and a handful of dates, consuming them quickly for immediate comfort. The mindful response is to first recognize the stress. The person pauses, takes a breath, and identifies the emotion. They then ask what they truly need. Perhaps the answer is a glass of water, a short walk, or a protein-rich snack. By choosing a response that serves their larger goal, clarity, over the immediate craving, comfort, they reclaim their agency. The act of eating mindfully, slowly, without distraction, savoring each bite, has a direct physiological benefit. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest state. This state is the opposite of the fight or flight stress response. In a parasympathetic state, the body produces more saliva and digestive enzymes, and blood flow is routed to the digestive tract. This ensures that food is broken down and absorbed more efficiently. Eating the same meal in a stressed, distracted, or rushed state, sympathetic dominance, leads to poor digestion and can exacerbate blood sugar spikes. The opposite of this is the common modern habit of eating while distracted. An individual might sit down with a healthy bowl of berries, nuts, and yogurt, but then proceed to read the news or scroll through social media on their phone. Even though the food choice is sound, the context is not. The brain, engaged in a cognitively demanding and often stressful task, switches the body into a sympathetic state. Digestion is impaired, and the meal is not registered as satisfying, leading to cravings for more food soon after. True self-care may involve disappointing the part of the mind that craves immediate, sweet rewards. This realization is central to lasting change. The path to sustained clarity requires a willingness to sit with temporary discomfort, to choose the long-term goal over the short-term impulse. This is not about punishment, but about a deeper, more profound form of self-respect that prioritizes stable well-being. It is important to acknowledge that mindfulness itself requires cognitive energy. When an individual is already fatigued, stressed, or experiencing brain fog, engaging the prefrontal cortex to make a conscious, mindful choice is difficult. Habit, the low-energy path, becomes incredibly seductive. This is not a moral failing. It is a biological challenge. This is why simplifying the environment, such as not keeping the high-sugar trigger fruits readily available, can be a crucial support strategy. It reduces the number of times one must deploy that high-energy mindfulness. Dyer often taught the power of I am declarations. He suggested that what follows those two words shapes one's reality. An individual stuck in a sugar crash cycle might unknowingly live by I am tired or I am foggy. Shifting to a mindful approach to food is an embodiment of a new declaration. I'm a person who fuels my body for clarity. This mental reframing, according to Dyer, must precede and support the physical change. The action, choosing a better food, reinforces the new identity, creating a positive feedback loop. The practice of mindfulness begins long before the meal. It begins in the grocery store. The habitual shopper buys the same items week after week, including the large containers of juice and the tropical fruits they are used to. The mindful shopper pauses before putting an item in the cart. They hold the bag of dates or the carton of orange juice and connect it to their intention for mental clarity. They might still buy it, but the choice is now conscious. Or they might decide to buy raspberries and avocados instead. This is where the battle for clarity is often won or lost. When do I choose habit over intention?